Welcome to Cast On Day. I'm Jana with Purl Together, and this week we're casting on for the Quill Tee. This is a pattern by Tiff Nealon, and it's a great pattern if you're new to sweater knitting, if you're new to color work. Join me. It's Cast On Day, and you're going to learn a lot. So first thing you want to do is swatch. If you haven't done that, go back to the swatching video I posted earlier in the week. I'll put the link up here in the upper right-hand corner as well as the video description down below. So be sure to go watch that first. So swatching is important. I know everybody's like, I want to swatch. You need to swatch because you want your sweater to fit. You're going to spend hours and hours knitting this, and you want it to fit your intended recipient, whether that's you or a family member or whatever. Your stitches per inch and your row gauge are important, unless you want to have a do-over. I'm a process knitter. I don't mind a do-over to an extent. I don't want to knit the whole sweater over again, though, so swatching in the round is important. Go watch the video. If you already swatched and you know what needles you're using, hooray, good for you. Brownie points. So we're going to cast on, and before we do that, we're going to use the long tail cast on calculator, and I will show you how to do the math for that, but if you want to skip the math, go to my long tail cast on calculator on my website, links below. So you just type in your email address and I will send you the calculator, and then you can bookmark it, and then you can use it for every long tail cast on in the future. The reason this is helpful is you don't want to end up with way too much or way too little. So there is a mathematical way to calculate how long your tail should be. So go check that out. If you don't want to give your email address, I understand. I get it. You can always unsubscribe later, and I send out a newsletter maybe once a month. I'm not real good at that. So it's not like you're going to get a lot of email from me. But nevertheless, I will show you the math. If you don't want to watch the math, you can skip ahead because I'll put in chapter breaks here as well. Okay, let's get started with the cast on. Okay, so for my size, I'm casting on 112 stitches. Now I want to multiply that by the diameter of the needle that I'm using. So for me, that's the 3.75 millimeter needle or a US 5. So I'm casting on with that. I got gauge with the 6, and we're sizing down for the cast on and the twisted rib. So then that will give me, now I've done this ahead of time, so I don't think I'm awesome and can do this in my head, because that is not the case. So that will give me 420. So now what I want to do is multiply that times pi, which is 3.14. 3.14. But I'm going to move the decimal place because 3.14 will give us our answer in millimeters, and we want centimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and move this decimal place now and then multiply this by 0.314. So our answer will be in centimeters. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. So again, I used the calculator and did this ahead of time. I'm just wanting to show you the idea behind this. So for me, that's 131.88. Now this is centimeters, but if I want to convert it to inches so I know what my long tail cast on should be in inches, since I'm in America and we use imperial rather than metric, if I multiply this, or sorry, not multiply, divide by 2.5, because there's 2.5 centimeters per inch, then I end up with 52.75 inches. So that's how long my long tail cast on should be. And then I'm going to add, you know, like 6 inches or whatever for my tail to hang on to and to weave in. So just a quick overview there. Now, like I said, if you don't want to mess with all that and you want to hop over to my website and get the calculator that does all that for you, just enter your email and then it'll be sent to you automatically. So I've measured off approximately 58 inches and I'm ready to begin. I have my slip knot, and now I'm going to cast on my 112 stitches. I like to do it in groups of 50. You can do it in groups of 20 and put a marker, whatever works for you, so you don't have to keep recounting everything. Now, I don't cast on like a lot of people do with the one hand method. So if you want to follow my long tail cast on tutorial much slower, you can click up in the upper right hand corner of this video and it'll take you over to that. You can do the same thing with the long tail cast on. There's a link to that in the video description. Okay, so we're casting on, and then I'll show you how we're going to join in the round, or how I do it, which is probably the least elegant way to do it, but it's sturdy. and I'm all about function and utilitarianism. Casting on 112. All right, I've cast on 112 stitches, and I have indeed double and triple counted that I have the correct number of stitches. So now I'm just going to go along and make sure that nothing is twisted, and that I want to have my finished edge towards the inside. That's how I like to do it. I'm going to end up probably doing a little magic loop situation here, or a traveling loop, which is where you just have one loop, not two, on your needles, and your circular needle, or I'll go find a smaller but circular needle. But anyway, I just want to show you how I'm going to join in the round. I like to have this all arranged so I can see the finished edge on the inside of my loop here. I can see the finished edge, and I have the tail toward me, and my first stitch that I'm going to work when I start beginning in the round, I'm going to work that first stitch here on the needle that is away from me, furthest away from me. You can refer to it as top and bottom if you want, but it's really, on the table, it's really closest to me and furthest away from me. So then what I'm going to do is get a hold of the tail, which in my case is a little bit long, but it's probably 10 inches. It's okay. What I want to do is take my right hand needle up under the first stitch as if I'm going to purl. This is just how I do it. There's a bajillion ways to join in the round. This is just my preferred method. Then I'm going to take that tail up and over. I'm just wrapping this behind here, and I'm going to push it through as if I'm purling. That's all I do. And then I draw through the end, just so I am literally sucking that up together. I've just taken the tail in through here as if to purl. And then I'm just going to tie that tail onto the working yarn. I'm just going to tie a square knot. Yeah, like I said, not very elegant, but it is secure. So I'm literally just tying a square knot. Left over right and right over left. And I'm cinching that up in the back. Yeah, that works for me a lot because it keeps it tight. And a lot of people do the thing where they switch places with the first stitch and the last stitch, or they knit two together, or whatever. And I've tried all that, and I still end up with a big gap here, and that's just me. So you do what works best for you. But if you're a beginner and you're worried at all about having a gap right here at the beginning, just do a square knot. You'll never know it later. Okay, so then I'm going to magic loop or a traveling loop, and I'm going to begin by knitting my ribbing. So that's just going to be a 1x1 twisted rib where you knit through the back loop, purl 1, and we're going to do that for 12 rounds. Okay, I have finished the twisted rib and the prescribed number of rows for my size. So now I want to move on to the portion of the pattern that says yoke setup. So you want to make sure that you are doing the instructions that correspond to your size. So again, make sure you've circled all of those instructions before you started. So I want to change to the larger needle size, and what I like to do is go ahead and leave the smaller size on the left needle where I'm pushing up the stitches, and then change the right needle to the larger size, because the right needle is what you're wrapping and what determines the size of the stitch. But sometimes when you change to a larger needle, scooching up the stitches onto the larger barrel is not as easy. So there's no reason to change them both at the moment. I just changed the one, and still scooching these up can be a little difficult. So on the yoke setup, you're just following the instructions for your size, but I wanted to show you the make one left. Now I have a video exclusively for make one right, make one left, and I'll link that down below in the video description, as well as a little button up here in the top right hand corner. So when you make one left, you're going to go in from the front, grab that bar, and when you do that, you'll notice that the strand is slanting to the left, hence the term make one left. But if we were to just lift that up and knit into it, it would make a hole. I'm going to go in, you go into the back, knit into the back of the stitch that you've just created. Now that's a little tight to get your needle tip into, so if you notice that's happening, you can just come into the front of it and then kind of roll your needle around in order to get the right hand needle to the back of that loop, and then just knit right into that. So you've lifted up the strand, but you're also twisting it at the same time and making it lean to the left. I'll show you that a couple of more times. So then for my size, I'm going to knit 2, and I'm going to do that again all the way to the end of the round. So with my right hand needle, I go in under the strand, and then I just want to knit into the back of that. And if that's too difficult to get, just go into the front as if you're going to purl and then do this little rolling maneuver to get your needle to the back of the stitch. I hope that makes sense. Okay, and then we're just doing this all the way around. So knit two, make one left, knit two, make one left, all the way around. All right, a couple of things. When you're done with the big increase round, you're going to want to double check your stitch count, and then also don't forget to change the left needle to the correct size. So a couple of notes there. If you are off in your stitch count at this point, double check how many you're off, and you could resolve that here if you need to. So next we're going to do the neck shaping with short rows, and the designer chooses to use German short rows here. You can likely use whatever short row method that you would prefer, but I'm going to show you the way the designer intended with the German short rows and creating a quote double stitch, and then also how to resolve that. Okay, I finished knitting the plain round, and now I'm starting the neck shaping, and I've knitted across the indicated number of stitches for my size. Now I'm ready to turn my work and do a double stitch. So simply turn your work over, and then we're going to do a double stitch by slipping that last one that we worked back over to the right hand needle, and you always want to slip as if to purl so you're not, unless indicated otherwise by the pattern. But we slip as if to purl in order to avoid twisting any stitches. So take that stitch back over to the right hand side, and then we're going to pull this up so that you see that there's two legs here. We're just going to pull this up, not real hard, but firmly enough where you're getting those two legs back up onto the needle, and it appears to be a double stitch. Now, the reason that we do this with short rows is to tighten up the bar between the stitches so that when we turn our work, there's not a hole. So we're just lifting that up, and that shortens the bar between those two stitches. And now with the wrong side facing you, you're going to bring your yarn to the front and purl back the indicated number of stitches. Now we're purling back to the beginning of the round marker. This is across the back of the sweater, so it just raises the back of the neck by adding a few rows. We're raising the back of the sweater so it doesn't sag and, choke you in the front. All right, I've purled back to the beginning of the round marker and then the prescribed number of stitches, and I double counted all of that to make sure that I'm still on track. Then I'm going to turn my work as indicated in the pattern, and with the yarn in front, I'm going to slip the last stitch that I worked over to the right hand side, and then I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to pull the working yarn up, and you can see that's going to shorten this bar in between and create the double stitch. And I know that looks really awkward, and it is, but it will be okay. Then we're going to knit back the number of stitches that it tells us back to the beginning of the round. And you can tell that I gave that another little tug. And by the way, when you're reading your knitting, it's easy to find that double stitch. You'll notice it, and then there is a bit of a gap afterwards. So you'll totally be able to see that when we come to it on the other side of our work. When we get past the beginning of the round marker, you'll totally be able to recognize that and see it, and I will show you as well. So we're going to knit past the beginning of the round marker and knit to the previous double stitch and resolve it, which simply means knitting those two legs together as if it's one stitch, because really it is one stitch. All you've done is pull it tighter so that the legs are revealed. So I'll show you what that looks like when we come to it. Okay, let's take a look. Now, we know that we knitted a certain number of stitches before to make the double stitch, so you can certainly count back, but you can also just kind of look ahead and get a preview of what's to come. What do you notice here? But you can see the double stitch right there. So you get an idea of where it is before you come to it. You can kind of feel it too. All right, I have arrived at the double stitch, and now I'm just going to go in and knit that as if it's a knit two together. And I've resolved that. Then I'm going to knit a certain number of stitches past it and create another one. All right, again, when I'm ready, I'm going to turn my work. My yarn is in front because I'm on the wrong side. I'm going to slip the stitch back to the right-hand needle and give it a little bit of a tug to draw up those two legs. and then I'm going to knit back to the beginning of the round. Okay, I'm at the end of row 4, and I just want to show you one more time the German short row, creating the double stitch on the right side. So I'm going to turn my work, make sure my yarn is in front, slip this stitch that's just worked off to the right hand needle, and then just give that a good little tug so that I'm drawing the legs of the stitch up and making them visible. And then I'm going to follow the instructions for row 5 and knit back to the beginning of the round, and then carry on to the previous double stitch and resolve that. Okay, so I think you have a good idea of how to do your double stitches and your German short rows. I'll show you what this looks like when I get all of mine done. Okay, row 7 takes us back to the beginning of the round, and then we're just going to knit one plain round to resolve the stitches, the double stitches as we come to them. And then if indicated by your size, you're going to knit an additional couple of plain rounds before we get ready to start the colorwork chart. Okay, I hope you found that video helpful. You can see how we've raised up the back of the sweater here. There's lots more rows here than there is over here at the front. So you can see the point of that. I still need to knit a couple of rounds until I'm ready for the color work. So next week's video on Tuesday or Wednesday, hopefully Tuesday if I can get my poop in a group, Tuesday we'll be beginning the color work. So if you haven't knit color work before, never fear. I will show you how I go about, it and keep the spacing appropriate so that it doesn't pucker, and we'll review how to read a chart as well, since the color work here is charted and not written. This pattern indicates that it's for an intermediate knitter, and I mean, that's true to an extent, but I will hold your hand. Don't worry. We will review how to read a chart. We will talk about your color work. I'm not going to share the pattern on screen because that would violate copyright, but nevertheless, I will show you what the deal is with reading charts. And I have a special video for that too. So next week, just to recap, next week will be starting on the color work portion of the yoke. So you want to have a pretty good contrast. I hope you have swatched as well with your colors like I did in the swatching video so that you'll know what needle is appropriate for getting gauge there. All right, thanks for watching. I would love to see your beginnings. Show me in the Ravelry group, tag me on Instagram, show me in the Facebook group. There might be little prizes coming along here too, like just little knitting stickers, things like that from me. So go check out the Ravelry group. We'll have some categories for work in progress prizes, etc. I'll get that set up this weekend. All right, I hope you have a fantastic weekend. And if you have Monday off, knit, knit, knit.